Alright, good days and greetings to you again. Welcome to this new episode on trying graphic designing. So last time we tried graphic design on the paper and we learned some few laws of drawing. So today I'm going to add some few things we also learned throughout that small exercise of drawing. So it wasn't only the 9 principles, but we also discovered something. So for you to realize that you know those things actually will help you in working on your Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Photoshop. So that's why I decided to add this small chapter quickly before we jump into this software. So what are the few things we also learned apart from the 9 fundamental laws we learned at that time? So the first thing we learned throughout that exercise was the workspace. You know, if you actually try to practice that exercise of drawing, though I did not use all the tools I required you to have, but I believe if you actually decided to exercise yourself and practice, you will get a chance to do that. So such as the colors. So in your process of doing, practicing and exercising yourself, so you set up a work environment, a workspace. So you have a table, probably papers on it, then your pencils, your rulers, your erasers, and other things. So all these elements make up your workspace. They make up your work environment, right? So that's one thing we learned in addition. The other thing is we've learned to know our tools, right? So not only you have a work environment, but you have the equipment you use to actually produce the artwork. So your pencil, for example, your colors, for example, right? The eraser, the ruler, all those are tools you use to design. And although one tool can be destined for one thing, but it can also be used for other things, or it can also be combined with other tools to bring other things. So for example, if you take your pencil, it is meant to draw, but we could use that pencil to do the shading as well. As you noticed, we use the pencil, we shade, right? And in addition to that, you could combine the color of the pencil, which is kind of dark gray, with another color of your crayons and get something else. You can also use the pencil as a ruler. So that's how it is as well once we jump on the software, right? So you've learned that you have a workspace, you have tools, and the mastery of your tools determines how agile you will be in your work, determine how sophisticated you'll be in your work. So the more you master your tools, the easier it becomes for you and the more creative you can become. The other thing we learn is the canvas, the work canvas. So what is the canvas? The canvas is the space, the small space in your workspace on which you actually produce your artwork. So in our case, when we were practicing, our canvas was the paper. So the paper is the work canvas. So that's where you do the drawing, that's where you produce your artwork. Quite easy, huh? So the next element, the next thing we also learned through that exercise was the composition. So you have your work environment, you have your tools, you have your canvas. So the work you made, the actual design, the actual artwork you drew on your canvas is a set of many elements which come together to create the whole work. That whole final work is called the composition, right? So the table we drew is a composition, right? The stones we drew are a composition. So including its environment, the ground, then the landscape and all this, it make up one image called the composition. So you have a final composition. So the same thing, once we start using our software, that's how we are going to work. We are going to bring so many elements together to create a composition. And if you check in our program, you can see that we have a chapter called composition. So now you understand that principle, that word of composition. It's actually creating images. Naturally, when you are taking a picture, nature, it composes the picture. Nature composes the picture. So nature has already composed every single angle. All you have to do is just take a slice and make a picture of it. So that is the composition. So the other thing too we could say we learned is the properties and options. What I mean by that is our tools, like I said with the pencil, although they have one basic function, we could also extend their functions. These kind of properties that our tools have, we also have it in software. So you can have a tool which has more properties, more options to offer. Right? So we can extend the tool's function, basic functions. So that's what we call properties and options of a tool, right? So once we have that, so I've summarized all these things we've learned through this small exercise. I wanted us to move to the software. So now we are dealing with a traditional way of composing, a traditional way of making artwork, then to a modern and more digital way of creating things. So we have seen in the traditional way how we make it, and we've learned some few lessons. Now it is time for us to take it to a more modern environment, a more digital environment, to make it probably easier for us, or to make us more adapted to our time. So to demonstrate what I just said, I would like us to go through our software and try to show you this element we just learned, this concepts we just learned through drawing on the software actually. So I'm opening my software here. We'll start with Adobe Illustrator. So you probably know how to launch Adobe Illustrator. If you don't, you just do the window button and then you look for Illustrator. It will show Illustrator for you. The same thing with Photoshop, and you get the software launched. Right? So what did we say we learned? The first thing we said we learned through drawing was the workspace. Where is the workspace? So the whole window here of the software you see is what we call the workspace. Right? This whole thing is the workspace. The proof is you have different versions of workspaces here. So you can actually reconfigure it just like you can reconfigure your table. So, and to prove it again, you can see here, there is a menu called workspace. So you can choose the type of workspace you want to use to work on. So depending on the actual activity you are about to do. So this is whole software, the whole interface as you see is what we call the workspace. Then the tools. At the left side here, you can see a list of tools. So what we saw was the pencil. So something simple that could help you draw like this, right? So this software has much more tools at our disposal that we could use to do much more things. So we discovered the pencil, and we discovered how to make shapes. So you could see we did the circle. We could also do the circle here. You can do so many things. You see? So the same tools we saw as traditional artists, we also have these same tools here, even much more and better in terms of their precision and sharpness, So the other thing we also saw was the properties, of the tools. So when you click on any tool, you can see that something on top here changes. And in this line here, things change based on the tool I choose. So let me take this guy so you can see. Let me take this one and see. Okay, let me take this one. So based on the tool, you can see that the properties change, right? It changes. So, and we also have them here. We have much more properties around. So this is to show you. So let me even take that brush I just used, paint brush, and then you can see here I can choose the stroke size. You see that? So this is one way of showing you the properties. For example, so if I take this guy here, the rectangle, I can also choose the stroke size and make it. I can choose the different colors to apply to it and so on. So these are properties of this tool. So the properties are there to extend the basic functions of the tool, right? The next thing we learned was the canvas. The canvas, actually, as you might have already noticed it, is that white space you see here, the small paper here. So it's just like that your A4 paper we use it in drawing. You see now why I ask you to bring those papers. So here we have the chance of changing our canvas sizes. At any moment we can decide to make our canvas look smaller or big. So to do that, we go here. So you can see a board here. In Adobe Illustrator you can quickly do it like this, but with Photoshop we also have different ways of doing it, right? I can focus the whole canvas on one thing or not and move things as I wish, right? So that's one beauty with this digital digital designing. So we have our canvas, and while you are even creating a new document, you can choose your canvas sizes already. Before you do that, you can write the sizes and then create it, and it will bring you that same size of the canvas, and you will have the freedom of setting your own work canvas. So the other thing we also learned was the composition. So like you could see here, I just made a composition, right? It is not a big thing, but I just made a composition. So this is it. Let me take a lighter green. So the whole work actually I'm doing here is the composition. The final result is my composition. You can see that. So the whole work, whatever I did, is my final composition. I could take this composition and export it as a final image that has to be used. So like the final picture. So that's the composition. Now, when we do the comparison between the traditional way of using things and tools and then the modern way, we can see that the modern way gives us flexibility, precision, sharpness, and compared to traditional way, it's more of hard things to do. You have no precision in how you draw, how you use the tools, and you have limited properties with the tools. It's one way, or it is difficult. It doesn't mean it's bad, but it's just like everybody has his preference. And I believe since we are in the modern world, it will be better even if we are good artists in the traditional way, to also try to use the digital tools in doing our work. So we have seen these few other things we've learned through the exercise of drawing. In the next episode, we are going to discover the software, Adobe Illustrator software, and then Adobe Photoshop software, and then we started designing. We'll now try design on the software.